Okay, we'll we'll back up a little bit to get the flow of things. Perik Yudalid. So in the book, lessons in Heichaltzu, it's page 112. Or at the bottom, it says, this is the reason. The paragraph on the bottom that says, this is the reason. If you're still using the booklet that we gave out, then it's on page 12. And the line that starts with the word Limehevi, Lamed Mem Hey Vav Yud. The middle of the line, it says V'lazais, and therefore, that's where we're up to. No, it's a different word. V'lazais Hasiba. Sorry. The line starts with the word chulu. It's 2, 4, 6, 8 lines from the top, page 12. The book are on 112. Zois Hasiba, this is the reason. So again, he's talking about a person who's davening and really meditating in order to generate true feelings. We're talking about feelings of humility. He's being humbled by the greatness of Hashem, that Hashem is infinite, and he realizes how small he is. But nevertheless, it says at the core level, it's possible that this is actually, at least in a subtle way, that there's yeshus involved, and that the person is getting yeshus from his avodah of bittul. Actually, there's a thought, consciously or subconsciously, of how great I am that I have this bittul to Hashem. So again, it's about something that it feeds his ego. And that means that even though he's experiencing bittul, it's not true bittul. And this is the reason that although he is someone who's truly committed to serving Hashem, nevertheless, the avodah is not the way it should be. Whenever it says these words in Chassidus, it doesn't mean that the person is wasting his time, that nothing's happening. What it's saying is it's not the way it should be, which is actually an expression also found in Gemara. In Gemara, it's found in reference to tzedakah. If a person, for example, is extremely wealthy, and the amount of tzedakah that he gives, even if it's a lot, but it's not in proportion to his wealth, we would also say the same thing. He's giving tzedakah, but not the way it should be. Because a person like that could give $100,000 a year to tzedakah, and so even though he's giving 10,000, 30,000, 50,000, he's not giving according to his capacity. So the same is also spiritually. So we're not saying that his avodah is absolutely nothing. He's davening. The fact that he's meditating is amazing. The fact that his meditation is generating certain feelings is amazing, but it's not the way it should be. There is an element of yeshus buried in the whole thing. Page 113. But it still is characterized by his yeshus and self-consciousness and what it does to himself, to his image, and to his feeling good about himself. Therefore, that's the real reason why he can't tolerate the other person. And specifically a person, a person who attained a certain standing, a certain level in his Avodas Hashem, in Cain, if he attained a certain level, so that person is like me. that means that person had achieved something similar to what I achieved. So this detracts from my yeshus, because then what's the big deal with what I've done? He also did the same thing. And even if he didn't do the same thing, if he did 50%, 20%, 80%, but nevertheless, being that he also achieved something similar to my achievement, it takes away that my achievement is not such an amazing thing. And therefore, that's why I can't tolerate this person, and he can't join together with him. Remember, we said that the proper way of learning is by joining with other people, having discussions and having dialogues, and that'll help you understand Torah better. And the same is with Avodah, that people should share with each other feelings about where they're holding in Avodah. And by doing that, there's so many things to gain. We learned about this before, but he can't do that because he can't connect to this person. He can't tolerate the person. And he's mishtadel, and not only that, in a sense, this would be something passive. I can't connect. I can't learn with him. I can't have a discussion with him. It's worse than that. Mishtadel, lahagdil, lahares, le'ein koil, shifta zelosei. He's actually proactive and makes an effort to show other people, to exaggerate the other person's weaknesses and flaws, and show everybody else how that person is a nobody. He degrades the other person's avodah. And the purpose, the reason why he does that, even though in his mind he might say, I'm doing it in order to help that person know the truth, and I'm giving constructive criticism, but the real truth is, he doesn't want people to compare that person to me, and they should realize that I am superior to that person. We're not even comparable. Oishle is gadol elav, and certainly that people shouldn't think that that person's even better than me. Even in a situation where the other person's greatness doesn't affect him. What does that mean? Even in a situation where the difference between me and that person is so vast that it doesn't have to worry that people even compare him to me, or people will think that he's superior to me, because it's clear that it's not that way. So it would be wrong to say that that's what I'm worried about. In this case, nothing to be worried about. Nevertheless, nevertheless, a person's a yesh just can't tolerate to see the mile of another person, the greatness of another person. And for that reason, he'll hate the other person. He'll embarrass the other person. He can't speak to him in a amicable way, and to really be close to him, certainly not. So this is in general, but especially when he sees that his friend has some specific milah, specific quality, whether he has a certain quality in an area of intellect, like he understands certain things, or he has a certain way about things and understanding something unique, or he has a hirus or precious yusera, or he sees that the person is being extra careful and meticulous about the yanim of Torah mitzvahs, or a certain purity. I would think if the other person has a certain milah, you would say, well, even though we're on page 114, even though even though I'm upset about the person's flaws, but he does have some qualities. Not only the fact that he has qualities doesn't make him respect him more or look at him in a better light. On the contrary, he gets even more angry and more infuriated. He just can't handle it. He can't bear it. Why is that? Because the fact that he has advantages, he has to undermine that, because that threatens his yeshus more than if he wouldn't have it. So basically, this person always feels threatened. Persons who yesh feels threatened because anything about the other person is threatening their. And again, the place where you can see this most, if you observe carefully, watch children interact with each other. And everything is all about, it's mine. I had it first. I want to be first. And I don't want that person to have that. All these feelings, it's yeshus. So adults have the same thing, but a little bit more sophisticated. Yes, there's another emotion that's involved here, and that is envy. There's a pasuk where it says envy is as cruel or as difficult as the grave. In other words, envy is something very difficult that you can't, it's very hard to overcome it. Of course, envy is also included in baseless hate. So there must be a sort of a fine line between envy and sinas chinam, but it's definitely associated. I don't know what actually the difference is, because the way we're explaining it, that's what envy is. You feel threatened by that person. That's why you're jealous, but it looks like it's a little bit different. The other person didn't do anything to him. The fact that he's wealthy, it's not that he took my money to become wealthy. He's wealthy in his own merit. Hashem gave him money. So if he became wealthy on my account, he took away my job, he took away my position, somehow he got the money that I thought I was going to get, I can understand you're upset. That's an upset that has logic to it. But when a person is wealthy just because he's wealthy and everybody else can't stand him, he might say, he did his own thing. Says, come on, you can do the same thing he did. He did this and this and made money. You can do the same thing. The other person is not preventing you from doing the same thing he did and achieve the same thing. So what is it? This is what envy is. That you are upset that the other person is being successful, and part of that is because that person's success is a threat to my yeshus. The bigger they are, the smaller I am. Shemakan is envious of the other person's success and the other person's wealth. After all, he didn't take yours. In fact, the Eibush is the one that gave him the bracha. Okay, and as it's known, that there's a quote from the sages: "Sina machmaskina ein lo takana." Hate that's born out of envy is beyond repair. Which means if the hate is for a reason, you can work it out. I hate this person because he did this and this to me. You can bring in a third party, and the third party will help explain it to that person, and they'll stop doing whatever it is that they're doing. But if I hate the person because they're alive, I hate them because they're successful, I hate them because they're comfortable, there's nothing you can do. If that's why you hate the other person, this kind of hate is something which you can't. The person has to work on changing it within himself. There's nothing that the other party can do. And generally speaking, it says it takes two to tango. I always had a shaila. If it's two to tango, it's a two to tango. But I verified with the experts, it's the tango. Apparently, it's a certain dance. And you need two people to do the dance. So when there's an argument, people say, but it takes two to tango. So in other words, you're not 100% okay. That's when it's based on reason. But if the other person hates me because of jealousy, there's no two people involved. Then it's just one person. Actually, we have the story in Chumash with Korach and Moshe Rabbeinu. That what was Korach saying? Why should you have all the positions? You became the leader of the Yidden. Aaron became the leader of the Kohanim. This relative of yours from your family became the leader of this, and that one became the leader of that. So basically, it was jealousy. He was jealous that Moshe Rabbeinu had all these positions of leadership. And when a person's jealous, and then he started to say, it's not from Hashem, you did this on your own. But that's all, the source of it was the jealousy.
The word, what is the word for envy? It looks like it's interchangeable. envy and hatred and jealousy, are they all interchangeable?
So I had this over the years with students in the class. What is the difference between envy and jealousy?
Right.
In English. In Hebrew, it's the word kina. It's one word, kina. Kina means jealousy. But is there a difference in English between jealousy and envy? I don't know if any English major, we should ask Rabbi Pape. I think that's his major.
There is, I don't know if it's right, but they say jealousy is you want that particular thing because your neighbor has it. And envy is that because you don't have it, you also don't want him to have it. That's envy.
Mhm. Is that in a mimer or that's English?
I don't know if it's in a while, but that's English.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, again, at the core level, is the same thing. It's the fact that the other person has more than me is a blow to me and to my ego. So therefore, I don't want them to have it for whatever reason. Page 116 is the summary. So Yeshua's Baveda B'Simcha. So the summary of this chapter is that both, whether the Aveda is Simcha, the Aveda is Bittul and Merirus, and being humbled by Hashem, in both cases, there could be the feeling of Yeshus that's generating these feelings, and the outcome will be Sinas Chinam. So going back to what I said yesterday, the other day, that we're talking about davening and meditation and feeling, these are really high levels. Like he says, these are people who are Oived Havaya. They're really considered people who really serve Hashem. And again, in Chassidus, when it says Oived Havaya, it doesn't mean just somebody who learns Torah and does mitzvahs. That's technical. Oived Havaya means internally transforming themselves. These are people that are working with themselves in self-refinement. There's a chapter in Tanya, in the fourth volume of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe says that the Lashon Oived comes from the source of it would be the word Oiris Avudim, a refinery of a leather. Like what is a refinery of leather? You take skin of an animal, which is very rough and tough, and you refine it and you make it into something that you could wear. And the nature of the work that's done is refining something coarse to make it refined. That's Avodah Baruchnius. In fact, there's an interesting example that's given that the Gemara says that Esav was one of the most outstanding people in the history of the world in terms of giving honor to his parents. In Kibbutz Avayim, either nobody or hardly anybody compared to him. And the Gemara tells a story of a certain Tana that he spoke about himself. And he said that his kibbutz avayim was out of the ordinary. And one time his mother, maybe this was on a Shabbos, was walking and the strap on her sandals ripped. So she couldn't walk anymore. Couldn't walk in her bare feet because it would hurt. So he got down on his knees, even though he was one of the sages, put his hands under her feet, and she walked on her hands like this all the way home. And then he said, and my kibbutz avayim is nothing compared to the kibbutz avayim of Esav. Nevertheless, Rashi says that when Esav spoke to Yitzchak, Yitzchak said, when Yaakov came in, Yitzchak said that he realized that this is, Yaakov speaks differently than Esav. Esav walked in and said, Yokum Ovi, which I guess in English would be translated something like pop, stand up, like a very coarse way. It's not that he did anything wrong, because he was great in Kibbutz Avayim, but he was a coarse person. He killed people, he did other very unrefined things. He was a coarse person. So even this Kibbutz Avayim, which was outstanding and superior to everybody else, but his way was a coarse way. Avodah means to take something coarse and make it more refined. The way I think is more refined. My feelings are more refined, and everything about me, my speech is more refined. Sometimes it's not about doing an avera with my speech, lashon hara, or lying. There's just a refined speech, and an unrefined speech, a refined way of speaking, an unrefined way of speaking. So Avodah in general means a person who works on self-refinement. That would be the definition in Webster's dictionary. So therefore, when we're saying that this is a oved, this is a person who really works on self-refinement, and still he could be filled with yeshus. So how are we talking, learning this mime and applying to ourselves? So the answer is, the bottom line is, what we can take a walk away with this mimer, and take away from this mimer is that if a people like that could be criticizing someone and having negative feelings towards someone, and nevertheless we say that it's coming from a yeshus, so certainly people in our caliber, that if we have hate towards someone, I can't stand someone, and in my mind is because of what he did or what he said or how he's acting, I have to think twice that really it could be yeshus and other feelings related to that, and therefore I shouldn't act upon it, at least that I know, because it's not coming from a pure place. You hear a lot about people that do things, sometimes violent things. I don't want to even mention some of them because it's just it's unpleasant and unrefined even to talk about it. But people do things that hurt others, whether it's physically, sometimes it's emotionally, embarrassing people, insulting people. And in their mind, it's all, in order to improve that person, help that person improve their life. But we have to really check ourselves, because very likely that this comes from yeshus. And by me putting that person down, it just feeds my yeshus. That's it. And even if a person says, but I know clearly where it's coming from, the Maimon says you don't know clearly where it's coming from. You think you know clearly. In fact, I didn't go into it, but in this Mamar Heichaltzu, not this one, the one that the Rebbe handed out, in the back, there's a little bit of a history of this Mamar. And the Friedrich Rebbe tells the story that there was a kiddush in his house, and then the Rebbe Shab, by surprise, came to visit, and then he said a Mamar, and in fact, he repeated this Mamar Heichaltzu twice. So the Friedrich Rebbe said there was someone that came for Yontiv, who was a chassid, and not just a chassid, but a real chassid. And he wasn't a person who did things for ulterior motives. He did things for the right reasons. Yet there was a big machlekes, a big argument raging in his city. I think he was the Rav there. And he was dealing with people in a very harsh way. And that's why the Rebbe said the Maimon, implying apparently that even though he, in his mind, he was doing it for the right reasons, but when it leads to sinas chinam and period al-vavis and putting people down and embarrassing, insulting people, that we have to realize where it could be coming from. So what do I do if I really feel like I want to help the other person? And the answer is, if we do enough somersaults, we'll figure out a way to do it without hurting them and without putting them down. And it's a matter of choosing the right words, choosing the right time, choosing the right circumstances, and the right language, the right tone of voice, and it can make a world of a difference.
Is there such a thing as hating someone that just really takes on something, or what I was saying is, that's just kind of hatred for another reason?
No, why can't it be hate for a reason? The hate for a reason could be if the person is hurting me.
Right.
Someone did something to me. So it doesn't mean that it's kosher. It just means that it's based on a reason. It's not the yeshus. It's simply this person took away my job, he took away my position, he's hurting my children, things like that. That makes sense that it's still nefesh b'hamis, I guess, because a yid is supposed to say to himself, like it says in Tanya, chapter 25, the famous Tanya in the Geras HaKodesh, where the Alter Rebbe says if a person would recognize that everything is from Hashem, they wouldn't be filled with anger or rage, because I'm angry at this person, but really it's not the person, it's Hashem. Like somebody once said, the chassid, that somebody was very angry at a person that hurt them, so he slapped them in the face. Apparently it was in public. So he says, really, he'd like to slap the Eibishter in the face, because he knows the Eibishter did it, but he can't do that, so he slapped him in the face. Yeah. But the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya that at that moment when a person is filled with anger or rage at another person, at that moment, his emunah that everything comes from Hashem sort of left him for the moment. Temporary insanity. I myself once witnessed this by Adolf Brengen, where there was someone sitting and speaking, and he's talking about Bittul. We're really nothing. We're absolutely nothing. Our seichel is nothing. Our midas are nothing. Our talents are nothing. He was actually a very successful shliach somewhere. And he said, everything we accomplish, it's all, the Rebbe is behind us. Without that, we would be nothing. And I don't know how many times he said the word nothing. Someone in the crowd who was much younger than him, was actually chutzpah, says to him, do you really think you're nothing? And he attacked him. And he tore him apart to pieces. He called him every name under the sun. His face was red like a beet. And I'm thinking, wow, that's pretty good for being nothing. If you're nothing and you have no yeshus and you're really nothing, what are you getting all worked out? He'll probably tell you, I was defending the Rebbe's honor because that guy did something wrong. But really, it's a perfect example where my mind, the mind is amazing, what it could do to us and how it could deceive us.
Yeah. Is this not standard for non-Jews as well? How we treat non-Jews and terrorists and
That what?
our response?
Our response to people that are terrorists,
Yeah.
our response to people terrorists is that we have to eliminate them because they're a danger. Right? So this has nothing to do with believing that everything's from Hashem. It's like when a person gets sick, it's from Hashem, but I still go to a doctor to get rid of the germ, to get rid of the bacteria, to get rid of the illness. So this disease, this illness has to be gotten rid of. Should a person engage in hate towards, also not, even that, we're not supposed to be engaging in hate. I mean, it was a famous story. I think you can maybe even see it on the video, if I'm not mistaken, where somebody was unfortunately sick with the unfortunate disease, and he asked the Rebbe for bracha, and then he said to the Rebbe should give a bracha that the disease should leave this person and go into, and he mentioned the name of some sort of an enemy. And the Rebbe's reaction was, why should it go into a human being? Let it go into the waters. He quoted a pasuk, that all sin should go into the depths of the waters. So the Rebbe wouldn't even tolerate to pronounce the opposite of a bracha against anybody. And that's not what we have to engage with. And the truth is, people who do engage in that and hate somewhere else, before you know it, the hate is going to the wrong place. And you see it clearly. That people get involved in something like hate towards a terrorist, but they get into the hate mode. That hate mode will continue, unfortunately, and will go right off track against people that are not in that category at all.
Yeah, it's prevalent on social media. Someone says something and everybody jumps in and chimes and, suppose that negative comment is commented, it's a way
Somebody recently posted a video. A lot of narishkeit come through, but people tell you, look at this, he thinks there's something there. So you have a guy driving a car, and right next to him, someone's driving a sports car. And the driver is saying, he thinks that he has real pleasure in this world driving a sports car. He doesn't understand the pleasure of coming to shul one day and not having to say tachlon. How could you compare that, How could you compare it to the pleasure of the one who's reading the Torah, makes a mistake, and everybody jumps on him? You made a mistake, that pleasure. That's pleasure in a sports car. So when someone's reading the Torah and everybody's quick to correct him, is it really that you're so concerned about the mistake, or is it like the pleasure of putting him down?
shouldn't be laughing. It's so true.
It's always good to laugh. Okay, we're coming pretty close to the end of the Mamar. I want to do one more chapter, and then we're going to do a review before we end the Mamar. So now that he spoke about jealousy, how it is such a negative thing, now he's going to speak about the fact that there's also a jealousy that's positive. So page 117, the beginning of chapter 15. Ois Tezvav.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
So going right back to where we started, this whole thing that happened was about Korach's jealousy towards emotion. That's what
Korach?
you're saying?
Yeah. Rashi says it in Chumash, that he was jealous of Moshe's position of leadership and Aaron's position of leadership. That's not what he said to people. I'm jealous and I want the position. He gave all sorts of explanations, and the explanations made sense. They tell a story about a certain Rebbe. I forgot what his name was, a Hasidic Rebbe, that they that he said to his Hasidim, I remember every single previous lifetime that I went through. I even remember when I was in the time when the Yidden went out of Mitzrayim in the desert. So one of the Chassidim said to him, so on whose side were you? On Moshe's side or on Korach's side? So he said, I was neutral. And everybody gasped, what, you weren't on Moshe Rabbeinu's side? So he said, if you would have heard the arguments of Korach, why he's right, and why Moshe Rabbeinu is wrong, you would have made so much sense. It was almost irresistible not to follow him.
That's scary. That's what really scares me. It just makes so much sense to do the opposite. Yeah.
And that's why Hasidus doesn't have too much respect for Seichel. In other words, on one hand, intellect is wow. On the other hand, Hasidus crushes intellect and says that nothing, Hashem is above intellect and all that. But for people that intellect is their highest thing, it's dangerous because intellect could lead to what was happened in Nazi Germany. And it could lead to everything and anything. Everything could make sense and perfect sense. So as he said, if you would have heard the arguments, because it says in Rashi, he was up all night arguing, giving to his crowd, explaining to them why he's right, making fun. He was also joking and making fun, humiliating Moshe Rabbeinu all night long. If you would have heard those arguments, you would see it was irresistible to not just see that he's right and join him. So it's not so simple. And obviously this is a tzaddik speaking who must have been, even then, not such a simple person.
And he took a lot of the leaders with
He
him.
took 240 of the leaders with him.
Yeah,
So therefore, in Chassidus, there was once a chassid to something very powerful. What's the first level where godliness is revealed in the spiritual worlds? Where does it start? Which is the first of the four worlds where godliness is revealed? Not Atzilus? Well, thank you. Okay.
No, but Atzilus is still connected.
It's so close.
Yeah, but it's still, I'm saying revealed. That's where godliness is revealed. In Atzilus itself, where's the first place that godliness is revealed? In Atzilus itself. Chachma. Okay, now next question is, where's the first place that godliness is contracted and hidden? After Kesser, where's the first place that godliness is concealed? There you are. So the first place where godliness is revealed is Chachma, and the first place where godliness is concealed is Chachma. So we have to recognize that that's what it is. That even though we're learning Chassidus, and Chassidus is Chabad, and we're focusing on Seichel, but Chas v'Shalom, we're not worshiping Seichel. We recognize the more you learn Chassidus, the more you realize that Hashem and godliness is way infinitely beyond Seichel. The reason why we focus on Seichel is that we want to understand things that are higher, and it should be channeled through Seichel, and then it's more internalized, but not Seichel is the last stop. Because everything and anything could make sense if you want it to make sense.
Could you just repeat that, please, Rabbi?
Where should I start from?
Start the very beginning. We started at 8:35.
Once upon a time, Hashem created the world. Gracious in the beginning.
It's true, it's that sentence is
That
worth
sentence was. so
Which one?
profound. You should sell it for $1 million, Rabbi.
Which one? Which one?
The one that you
About
just.
seichel just now.
what you
That
just said.
seichel is the first place where godliness is, the infinite light of Hashem starts being revealed. And seichel is the first place where the infinite light of Hashem starts being concealed. What I'm saying is that it's very misleading to certain people that think that Hasidus is seichel, and it's not true. Even though we say Hasidus is Chabad, Chochma, Bina, and Das. But the truth of the matter is that Hasidus is actually focusing on the opposite, how seichel is infinitely inferior, infinitely to higher, to Ein Sof. And that seichel is Yesh Me'ayin, Chochma Me'ayin Timotzi. So what is this big fuss about seichel? We want that the knowledge of Hashem, who is infinite and above and beyond logic, should be channeled through the logic. And when it's channeled through logic, we can internalize it, but not that it is logic. I said logic is not the last stop. It's not that to say that we are serving Hashem with logic. If anything, Chassidus talks about the fact that don't serve Hashem with logic. Serve Hashem with Kabbalah soil, Nasa v'nishma, total commitment, and to nullify myself, bittul. And seichel, the understanding is just that when I think about Hashem, who's abstract and infinite and beyond the finite world, I want that to be channeled through the seichel, and then it's really internalized. It's not something outside of me, it's something that becomes part of me. Because seichel allows things to be internalized and to become one with me. Just like food, when you digest it, it becomes part of your flesh and blood. When you understand something, it becomes part of your psyche.
You're saying seichel should be the conduit, not the.
Exactly. It's not the actual thing, it's the conduit. On the contrary, the whole point of Maimorim is always to let us understand how seichel, even the deepest, greatest, highest seichel, is nothing compared to higher, which is above seichel. If you remind me tomorrow morning, I'll explain another thing based on what I just said to you. Okay, to be continued.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.